One of the most common questions I get asked by business owners who do their own bookkeeping is, how do I categorize the purchase of fill in the blank? Many business owners are so hung up on making sure that they categorize expenses correctly and call them the quote-unquote right thing, when in reality, it doesn't matter. Or at least it doesn't matter as much as you might think. Hey there, and welcome to the Boutique Bookkeeper Show, where we take the mystery out of your money and make your numbers make sense. I'm Megan, virtual bookkeeper and bookkeeping coach, and I love helping female boutique owners just like you finally feel confident about the financial side of your business. If you're tired of feeling anxious every time you have to open QuickBooks, or if you're making sales but constantly left wondering, where did all that money go? You're in the right place. We'll cover all things bookkeeping and taxes, all in plain English, so you can be less intimidated by the numbers and finally start to use them to help you grow a profitable boutique. So, if you're ready to stop avoiding this whole numbers thing and start keeping more of the money you make, grab your coffee and your calculator and let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Boutique Bookkeeper Show. I'm Megan, and before we really dive in, I just wanted to give a shout out to Erica, who recently left the very first review of this podcast on Apple Podcasts. She said, "Megan is great at bringing practical info to a topic that feels scary. Thanks for making bookkeeping topics feel easy to understand and friendly." Erica, you are so sweet. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to write that. And I am so grateful for ladies like you that find value and appreciate the content that I'm putting out here for business owners like you. So thank you very much. Today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about how to categorize your expenses and why it doesn't matter as much as you might think. So as a general rule, anything that you spend money on that is ordinary, meaning other business owners in your industry spend money on it too, and necessary, meaning that this purchase is essential in you operating your business, it is going to be deductible no matter what. And most of the time it's going to be 100% deductible, meaning you can deduct the full amount. There are a few exceptions and limits around certain categories, and we're going to go over those in just a minute. It's also important to remember that your inventory purchases are an asset, not an expense. But pretty much anything else, you can group them into whatever categories you want that will make sense to you. So let's take, for example, your monthly Canva subscription. You can choose to call it software expense, software and apps, subscription expense, office supplies, or really whatever else floats your boat. So in the rest of this episode, we're going to be talking about what those specific category exceptions and limits are in your bookkeeping that you do need to be a little more careful with. And then we're going to be covering my 2 general rules to follow when it comes to how you should be categorizing your expenses. So let's talk about those specific exceptions and limits. Now I'm going to preface this section by saying that these are the current exceptions and limitations for 2026. But the tax law is always changing, so make sure you consult with your own CPA or tax preparer if you have any questions on some of these things that I'm about to say. And as always, too, none of this is meant to be taken as exact tax or legal advice, so again, consult with your own CPA or tax preparer. So, category number 1 with some specific exceptions and limits, let's talk about business meals. So generally speaking, any business-related meals are only going to be 50% deductible, meaning if you purchase a $50 meal, you can only deduct half of that, or $25 worth. So this includes meals taken during a business meeting with a partner or supplier, any travel meals while you're out to market. Any of those are generally only going to be 50% deductible. In order for a meal to be 100% deductible, meaning you can expense and deduct the full amount of the meal that you purchased, it must be related to a company social event. So think like holiday parties or summer appreciation picnics for the benefit of all of your employees, or meals and snacks to be consumed by the general public. So if you hold any in-store events where you have snacks and goodies just sitting out for customers to consume, those types of things can be 100% deductible. So as a general rule, any time that you are buying any type of meal, food, or snack, Be very sure that you are documenting the business purpose of that meal. You also want to document who was present. So if it's actually like a sit-down meal, you're going out to eat someone, make sure you document who you were meeting with, both their name and maybe their title and what business they're with. And then also make sure you have an itemized receipt to show what was actually purchased, not just the total credit card slip that you get where you add the tip and sign your name. You want to make sure it actually details out what was purchased. So when it comes to your bookkeeping, I also generally recommend that you have 2 separate meal categories just to help you track these different types. So have one that is noted as 50% deductible for any of those travel meals or business meeting related meals, and then have another category for anything 100% deductible just to help you keep track of it in your business. Even if something is only going to be 50% deductible, you can still show the full expense amount, so 100% of the amount, on your business P&L because it is truly a business expense. Just know that when tax time comes around, you're likely only going to be able to deduct 50% of that total on your P&L. So that is the first category that has some specific exceptions and limits. The next category I want to talk about is gifts. So generally speaking, there is a $25 per person limit on what can be deducted as a gift expense. So if you want to give out any type of holiday gifts to your top customers or colleagues, just know that you may not be able to deduct the full amount on your taxes if you are giving something over $25. One way to get around this gift limitation is if you buy anything that has your own business logo on it, it can be considered advertising, and then you can deduct the full cost of whatever it is that you're giving. And I'm also going to give a little warning here that any cash, check, or gift cards given to your employees as a gift, it generally needs to be added as taxable wages to their W-2. However, buying a low-cost holiday gift under $100 are generally exempt from it's called the de minimis exception, and the full amount is allowed to be deducted by the business. But as a general rule, anytime you purchase or give a gift, it's a good idea to, again, document the recipient, the date, the cost, and the business purpose of that gift, and then provide a list of all of these gifts to your tax preparer so they can help determine what can actually be deducted at tax time. But again, whether or not it can actually be deducted or not shouldn't sway you from actually putting that expense on your books. The full cost of any gifts you choose to give as your business can be a business expense and listed on your P&L. Again, it might just need to be handled slightly differently come tax time, but your tax preparer should be able to help you out with that. All right, and the third category I want to talk about here is auto expenses or vehicle-related expenses. So generally speaking, for a boutique owner, it's probably going to be hard to claim your own personal vehicle and say that it is for 100% business use. But for those of you that have a mobile boutique or a trailer, you can pay for all of the vehicle-related expenses from the business for that mobile boutique. And any of the expenses are going to be 100% deductible, meaning you can deduct all of the costs. If you ever happen to pay for personal vehicle expenses from the business, I generally recommend tracking those expenses kind of in the other expenses section in the very bottom of your P&L, as generally they're not going to be 100% deductible, and you are able to deduct a prorated portion based on the actual amount of business miles that you have driven throughout the year. So if you are using a a personal vehicle for business use, I highly recommend that you keep a mileage log throughout the year to help you track how many miles are actually driven for business purposes. So all of your trips to the post office, any trips to the airport, anything like that, keep track of all of the business miles you have driven, because that will help you be able to back up and support any automobile expenses that you try to deduct on your taxes. All right, so I think those are the major exceptions and limits for you to be aware of. So make sure that you're tracking your business meals, gifts, and auto expenses very clearly and carefully. But for the rest of your spending activity, you have a lot more flexibility. So for the rest of your spending activity, let's cover my 2 general rules to follow when it comes to categorizing your expenses. So rule number 1, you want to make sure that you are categorizing expenses so they make sense to you. So you should be able to look at your profit and loss statement every month and know exactly where all of the different types of spending activities, which line they fall into on your P&L. So if you're using a software for your bookkeeping, which I highly recommend that you do, feel free to rename the different default expense categories and use terms that are clear to you. Oftentimes, the chart of account that comes preloaded into QuickBooks or any other software, it's going to be way more detailed and elaborate than you will ever need. And just a refresher for any of you that are maybe new around here, a chart of accounts is essentially a list of all the different expense categories and income categories that all of your transactions are going to be sorted into. And most of the time, a software will come with a default one already in there, but one of the first things I ever do when I set up a new QuickBooks account is I literally delete the whole thing that's been preloaded in there and I import my own retail-specific one. So if you're interested in grabbing your own retail-specific chart of accounts template, you can grab a copy on my website. It's at findingfreedomfinancial.com/COA-template, and I'll be sure to link that in the show notes below as well. All right, so that was rule number 1, categorize expenses so they make sense to you. Rule number 2, you want to categorize your expenses in a consistent manner. So thinking back to my original example of your Canva subscription, if you choose to group your Canva expenses in with software expenses and have a category for specifically software expenses, make sure that you are always putting your Canva subscription into the software expenses bucket. This will help you be able to compare your expenses from month to month or year to year and be able to accurately compare these expenses over time. So don't worry so much about how you're grouping these types of expenses or what you're calling them. Just make sure that it makes sense to you and you are the business owner and your finances should be organized in a way that is clear for you to understand and just be consistent with how you are grouping things together and categorizing them in your finances. And as a little bonus tip for you, I like to say, when in doubt, add a new account. So if you start paying for a new type of expense and it doesn't really fit into any of the expense categories that you already have in QuickBooks, then just go ahead and create a new expense account in your chart of accounts. Especially if you think it's going to be an expense category that you use again in the future, feel free to add a new account that clearly identifies kind of this new expense category and start using it. So again, your chart of accounts is meant to be customized for your business needs. You don't need to try and make it fit into a template. You get to design it however you want. All right, so just a quick recap of today's episode. What you choose to call your expense categories, it really doesn't matter as long as you clearly identify any of those expense categories with specific limitations, so meals, gifts, and auto expenses, just because there are special guidelines around those categories when it comes to tax time. But anything else, categorize them in a way that makes sense to you, call them whatever you want, use your own language, and also consistently categorize them the same way. So instead of using software expense 1 month for Canva and then grouping it with office supplies another, stick one category that you're going to consistently put your Canva subscription in and make sure you're using that same one month over month. This is why I love to utilize the QuickBooks bank rules that you can set up because it will automatically preload those same accounts in there. So you can just click save, confirm that, yep, that's what I've called it in the past. That's what I want to call it in the future. So I hope this helped you feel a little more relaxed and at ease as you do your own bookkeeping and it takes some of the pressure off. But if you want help feeling even more confident in your bookkeeping this year, then I would love to invite you to join my free masterclass designed to help you make your money make sense. You can register for it at findingfreedomfinancial.com/masterclass or click the link below in the show notes. But that's all that I have for you today. Make sure to tune in next week for another episode. I'll see you there. Hey there, and thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope that I shared something that helped you feel just a little bit more confident in understanding all the numbers in your boutique business. If you found this helpful, don't forget to go and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That's the best way for other boutique owners just like you to find this podcast so I can help them feel just a little bit more confident in their numbers as well. If you have any questions about what you heard today, hop on over to Instagram and send me a DM at Finding Freedom Financial. I'll be back again real soon, but in the meantime, go implement or take action on something you learned today. I promise your future self will thank you.